here's the deal. Just logically, what mammal walks on its nail? None.
Right.
Just the horse. If you perfectly load them, that's the only animal that we say should walk on the nail. The horse just is not that special. They're
Right.
very special, especially in here. But as far as going against everything that nature says should be, the horse isn't that special. They don't do that. They walk on the whole bottom of the foot. They walk on the thick pad just like every other mammal ever. You're listening to the Primarily Hooves podcast, where we make learning accessible from the ground up. We're back. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Lauren.
And this is the Primarily Hooves podcast. We're so glad you're here to join us today. It is a very cold day today, so you may notice the environment has changed a little bit. We are not out in the horse barn with our miniature horses, but we are Southerners with Southern blood, so 35 degrees is a bit too nippy.
A little too nippy.
For us, and so welcome to the house. We are so glad to have you in the living room with us. For those of you who are returning, we have a super special episode for you guys today that I think you're really going to enjoy. For those of you who are new, I assume you're also going to enjoy the episode, but since you may not know us, I recommend you start back at episode 1 because they build on each other. We are a mother-daughter barefoot hoof trimming team with a special interest in how the hoof really works. And so our podcast is totally dedicated to that topic. And so I encourage you to go check out those other episodes. I think you'll find them a lot of fun, and they build on each other to where we are now.
That's right.
We've been very busy, so we haven't gotten to upload a podcast in a hot second, but we are just so excited to be here to tell our story today.
Yes, lots have been happening, and we'd like to catch you all up.
But first, I want to thank all of our Patreon members. You guys are the ones who make all of this possible, and we really appreciate your support, especially when the podcast isn't coming out as regularly as I would like. You guys mean so much to us, and we can't thank you enough. If you're interested, our Patreon is available for your membership pleasure, and there'll be a link in the bio to it, and it just is filled with handcrafted articles, videos, etc. on all topics, hoof and horse and healthcare. Over on the Patreon is where you can ask questions, and we'll get back to them either in the comments or via a Patreon post. And so I really encourage you guys to go over there. I'm really proud of the Patreon, and the Patreon members seem to be enjoying it, so that's awesome. I also want to thank all of our people on social media. We love you guys, and we really appreciate the support. It's so fun to craft stuff for y'all and see you enjoy it and share it and the whole thing. And just know that we're playing a part in spreading evidence-based, good horse healthcare information out there to those who need it, because there is such a drought currently in the educational, I guess, community, if you want to say it that way, to what people have access to. And so we're really proud to be able to be a part of putting out the little olive leaves people can grab onto and search for more, those who are really hunting, you know.
Absolutely.
So with all that out of the way, we've got a lot to talk about. I don't know if we're going to be able to get it all done in one episode, if we're going to have to go a two-parter, so we may as well just jump into it.
Let's jump.
A few months ago, we were contacted by one of my amazing mentors, Elizabeth Voss, and she invited us to a Dr. Bowker lecture at the Vlugen Institute of Equine Osteopathy in Ocala, Florida, and we jumped at the opportunity. It was really cool. It's one of his first lectures since COVID. Him and his wife are older, and so when COVID hit, they really had to bunker down because his wife's health is already not very good. And so this is one of the first lectures he's done post-COVID, and it was for Vlugen postgraduates and their farriers. And so typically we wouldn't have been able to go, but because we were invited, we got the opportunity. And so we said, yes, whatever we have to do to make that happen, yes. Because I hadn't personally, as much as we've been working with Dr. Bowker over email and text and phone call, that kind of stuff, I haven't personally ever gotten to accompany a lecture. You know, I know you have, but it's been a while.
Yeah, back, I'm not even quite sure of the date. Probably, 2010 maybe. And I probably not correct, but he did a lecture in South Carolina that I got to go to just because I knew of him, I knew his research, and I wanted to go. Did not know him personally, just that he was amazing and really studied in depth about the horse's hoof. So back then I wanted to go, and my mind was blown after the lecture, which, you're always blown away by Dr. Bowker because he takes things so deep. And that is truly the amazing thing. We can look at things and think and surmise what might be going on, but Dr. Bowker knows what's going on because of his in-depth research. So yeah, he's truly an amazing guy, and so thankful that after he retired, he's still working on all this passion of his, and it is truly amazing.
I think we get a little messed up sometimes in the hoof care community because we think working out in the field, working on horses, the horse is really the best judge.
Yes.
And so you kind of, something works, something doesn't work. You get something working a couple times and you think you really know something. And not to discount that, but it is kind of anecdotal.
Right.
Something that those of us who are physically doing it out in the field cannot do is see truly inside, not just x-rays, ultrasound, etc., not just that, but to see inside, to see how those cells duplicate, how it really works, and that can just open such a door to understanding why what you're doing might work, why what you're doing maybe doesn't work in 5% of the cases, those kind of more in-depth, really looking at it. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this job or how good you typically are. I think that is a missing link that none of us who don't know how a microscope works can ever accomplish.
Right.
And so it's always kind of spooky to me when there is somebody who doesn't have a researcher that works, that they're working under, because it's like, you can get something done, but you really need to understand how it works. But that's my narrow-minded opinion. And that... You know what they say about opinions.
Right. Well, and then, you take what you've learned from Dr. Bowker, and, the last thing that you want to do is try it out on a client, right? Because you're saying, wow, well, that's really interesting information. And so I don't know how trimmers, farriers do it without a farm full of horses like we have, because there is experimentation going on. And because when we come back from a Dr. Bowker lecture, or we see something new that he's put out on video, or we've had discussions with him back and forth, we always try it out on ours. And we give it time, we give it 6-8 months just to make sure that, and how to implement. That's the other thing, is how to implement this in a way that keeps the horse as sound as possible, but progresses the horse to a sounder place so that we do see the improvement. And I know when we bring it to our clients, we're always stepping back a little bit. We don't push it to the max. We say, okay, let's work at this for a little bit. Let's see what changes we get and continue on. So
good, better, best.
That's right. That's right.
And that, from the research standpoint, he can say you need to do X, Y, Z.
Yes.
Which is great, but we have to take that and then we have to apply it to the living model. And so that's where then the good, better, best philosophy comes from. Because if you are way over here and I need you to be over there, Dr. Bowker is going to say, get here. But it's our job in the field to take the steps to finally get over there. And that's where having our own horses is such a blessing. And there are folks out there who do the job and who don't have horses. And that is...
Right. That's
always made us scratch our heads.
That's very difficult.
Right. Because anything you're going to do for the first time, you're going to do on a client horse.
Right.
And you may not totally know how to implement it. Not even that the thing you're going to do is going to be wrong. But there is oftentimes finesse, or you see people get in trouble all the time for just shortening the toe, take the toe back. But they didn't take it back strategically, systematically, in a way that allows the back of the foot to build up at the same time. And so you, step by step, take that horse, and in 6 months, the toe is back and the horse never took a bad step, versus you just took it back today. That didn't work. Right. They weren't prepared. It's like going to the gym and immediately starting to lift 75 pounds and you hurt yourself and you're sore and it's bad. And now that didn't work. So I'm never going to the gym again. Well,
Right.
no, you did it wrong. You needed to step yourself up into it. You've been a couch potato for 10 years. You can't go and curl 75 pounds. That's crazy. But that's what we do to these horses all the time.
Right.
And then we say, well, that one can't go barefoot, or that just didn't work,
Right. Well, and then you have to take into consideration the wide variety, right? Because you're not just trimming the standard quarter horse or whatever. At least not here. So, we have everything between miniature horses, some young miniature horses to very, very old miniature horses. We have standard riding horses. Some are very young, some are very old. Some have metabolic conditions. Some have physical limitations.
Some are gated, some are not.
Right. So
some are warm bloods. Some are performance horses. Some are draft horses. Some are draft horses who work. I mean, it's all, you don't know. Then
You're listening to the Primarily Hooves podcast, where we make learning accessible
we really,
from the
as
ground
much
up.
as in this freezing cold weather, do I really want to be out there feeding and cleaning up after all of these horses? But yes, because they are the testing ground. And happy to say they're all doing fantastic. Which is great. But that takes a lot to get them to that point. It really takes a lot of discussion. It takes a lot of information, and it takes sometimes just saying, "Whoa, on that. Let's come back in 2 weeks."
Well, and I think it's worth writing down for another episode in the future is the timeline or the progression at our own farm of when Dr. Bowker came into our lives and we started working with him on rehabs and implementing these ideas onto our own herd.
Yes.
What that looked like, how the rough spots in it, the trials and tribulations, the figuring out, taking what he says and actually applying it where that horse is, determining where that horse is and what that looks like today. Because back in 2015, what we were doing and how we were trying to do it versus where the horses are today and the benefit that they've had from all the trials in the beginning. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
It is.
But there was a journey. There was a definite journey.
Right.
It's not just step 1, step 2, step 3.
Right. Right. And then our clients' hooves took longer because we didn't come in as maybe you could call it aggressively or with the fervor that we had with our own because we know why. But your client is sitting there saying, well, why is my horse lame today after a trim? And, we say, oh, we Dr. Bowkered them. But you have to understand and look at the foot and understand the hoof to determine how much you can push that hoof in one trim,
Right.
So it is definitely a delicate balance.
Right.
And
I think that's worth talking about one of these days.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're probably
not today.
15 minutes into this thing and we've not even barely started here. So we should probably start. What was it? It was like 3 weeks ago, I think now from the time we're filming this. Hopefully I'm going to get it edited and up really quickly. So it's just 3 weeks, but you never know. So right before my birthday, it was like the weekend of, was it November 8th and 9th or 7th and 8th? It was a Saturday, Sunday. And so we drove down to Ocala, Florida.
Yes.
Which was pretty good. It was a really good, mostly drive until we got into Florida on, the highways and whatever. Then it bogged down a little bit. But all in all, a really good drive. And Friday night, it was just getting into the hotel. Found a banging barbecue place. Mission Barbecue is what they were called.
Yeah, shout out to you guys.
Shout out to Mission Barbecue. A, delicious, but B, it appeared to be veteran owned, and they were very into supporting the veterans. I mean, it was really, really, really cool.
They had a tank outside.
that was more like, it wasn't quite a tank. It was like, it wasn't a deuce and a half, but it was that size truck.
Yes,
a little smaller than like a deuce and a half. It was pretty cool. Maybe if I can think of it, I'll put the picture in because it was pretty cool.
It was cool.
And the best pulled pork of my whole life.
Yes.
One of those, like, you didn't need the barbecue sauce,
Although they had like 6 different barbecues.
And they were delicious too.
Yeah.
Such a good, okay, but that's not why we went. I would go just for Mission Barbecue, but that's not why we went. So Saturday morning, we got to arrive to the Vlugen Institute in Ocala for the very first time. We'd never seen it before. We've seen pictures of inside the classroom and whatever. Obviously, we follow them on Facebook. I've had friends send me pictures of the whiteboard doing stuff, but we've never been there. And it's a new location. I think they've only been there the last year. They moved from Texas. And so we got to...
Oh, beautiful area.
Totally beautiful. The nice rural horse country Ocala, you know, and so very quiet. And they've built themselves a lovely classroom. And so the participants were mostly handpicked, and so it was majority Vlugan graduates and the ones who were really, really into the horse, really, really into understanding every fiber of the horse. So that was really cool. You were, unlike, I guess, maybe some other lectures where you are more just the general public and not everybody is as dedicated to absorbing as much information from the presenter as possible. You were in a situation where everybody was there and their sole intent was to just absorb as much as they could, which was friggin' awesome. Because that's what I'm there for. I don't care to talk. We don't need to network. This is not about me. This is about absorbing.
Absorbing information.
I've got 2 days to just try to cram as much as I can. My hand, I was sore in here from note taking. I'm a bad typer, so I wrote all my notes and I was sore up in here. I didn't know you could be sore up in there. Probably not just from the writing, but he talks so fast that then you're writing tense. You know, so the writing is like a full body experience. But it was a great atmosphere to be learning in.
Yes.
We also had really been kind of waiting on this opportunity for a while now because prior to COVID, we were right on the cusp of going up to Michigan and visiting Dr. Bowker. And that was something we wanted to do so
badly.
And then COVID came. Nope. That all kind of shut down. And then because they are older, we're not going to push, hey, we want to come up. No, if they want retirement and privacy and to just do totally fine. We are so thankful for the correspondence we do get. And so this opportunity felt like a long time coming, I guess, because we had been kind of on the edge of our seats, hoping one day, that the era of getting to see Dr. Bowker in person hadn't ended yet, and it hadn't.
Right.
I would chalk this up to a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm ready and prepared if that's the case, but I sure hope he had enough fun that this is something he wants to continue doing because I'm all for that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so what was really cool about, I think, this venture versus some others is he really came into the room wanting questions, right? Wanting us to kind of not challenge him. If you were in this room, you already understood the fundamentals. We weren't arguing, but a horse should be peripherally loaded. No, we're past that. We're done with that. That's not the question.
Right.
But poke holes in his teaching if it didn't make sense or if...
Inspire him.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it. Yes, which was very interesting because too often at things you're just being taught at. They're just teaching at you. And that's fine. That's totally fine. But to have this incredible researcher come into the room and say,
I want interaction.
You need to push me further. That was very cool and made it more conversational versus just a speaking event.
That's right.
And that helps to kind of soften and warm the room and get the room ready. Not that most of us weren't too intimidated to ask good questions because it was you had to get past the whoa, this is Dr. Bowker. My little pea-sized brain does not have any question that could ever, challenge you to think more. That's selling us all short, I know. But you're in that oh.
Well, and I think it was very funny because when we got to the Institute early that morning, we noticed immediately that the owner of the Institute, Yannick, was outside. And so we went up and introduced ourselves and thanked him for having the conference because we were just so looking forward to it. And so then we stepped inside the classroom to, get the seats and take a look around. And Dr. Bowker was in the front of the classroom at a desk, heavily into his computer and pulling photographs up and changing things at the last minute. And I say to Danielle, well, we need to go introduce ourselves because, we know him by sight, the videos, and, I'd seen him in lecture before, but he's not seen us.
we're not sending selfies,
No, we're not sending selfies. We're not doing
We're
video.
sending hoof photos.
Right. And so, if I look like a hoof, he might be able to tell who I was. But, and she's like, no, don't go bother him. Don't go bother him.
I'm an introvert. Like, leave the man alone, Like, we're in the presence of greatness. Like, shut up, sit down. That's how I am, I can talk a lot on a podcast, but, like, in real life, if I'm not, like, the one teaching, then, like, y'all do your thing. I'm just going to be here over here quiet,
Right.
But not her.
I don't have that reputation. I can talk almost anywhere. And so he's sitting up there, and what I'm noticing is he is pulling up some photos of horses that we trimmed. And so that was really cool. So there's a picture of Blue's hoof up on the whiteboard. And so as I walked over, I leaned down and I said to him, so I see you've got my photo up here on your whiteboard. And, he was just intensely, he didn't know anybody was coming up. And he looks up and he has this kind of strange face at me. And I could clearly see he either A, didn't hear me or, had no idea where this was going. So I said, Dr. Bowker, we're your girls from Tennessee. And then he looked again and I said, Lauren and Danielle. Well, he popped up, gave me the biggest hug, hugged Danielle, was just so happy. He said, I'm just so happy you guys could make it. And, we said we wouldn't have missed this for the world. And it was so nice to finally see him in person. And so then eventually he said a little something about his wife, who, God bless her, she is a saint because of all of the time that we have taken from him. That's time coming away from her. So we went over to talk to Mrs. Bowker, and we thanked her profusely for, just letting us borrow her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And then she looks at me and says, well, you're famous.
She's so cute.
And oh my gosh, I had I had to just chuckle at that. And I said, well, I don't know about that, but, thank you so much. And you're just so sweet. So anyway, we got our little bit of, introduction and hellos. And that was really, really nice. Yeah, no, I'm going to go up and say hi to people.
It's just how she is. Speaking of Dr. Bowker's wife, one of the first things he started talking about as he began was that he's been retired for several years now.
Yes.
And he's got a garage about half the size of the classroom we were in. And the classroom wasn't small, but it's not huge.
Right.
And he said that he was able to take most everything, bones, devices, diagnostic tools and equipment from Michigan State when he retired. And it's all in his garage. And his wife is urging him, he has to start to downsize a little bit. And so he's trying to. But in order to do that, you have to go through everything you have, right? And so he's pulling these bones and these hooves that maybe he hasn't looked at in 20 years out of storage. And he's starting to go through them one by one and try to get everything he can out of them before putting them in the set-aside box to maybe donate or whatever, which I just think that's awesome.
Yeah.
He's been retired for how long now? And yet still in his free time, this is what he's doing. And that's why we still have these advancements being made in understanding how the hoof works, despite him no longer actively being at MSU.
Right. It's amazing.
And that really speaks to the fact that this hoof thing is a passion.
That's right.
It's not just about a paycheck. This isn't just, it might have started that way, the job he was assigned to do, but it's turned into so much more than that, to the point that you could say now it's his hobby. It's more than a hobby,
Much more.
And so that then feeds into when he teaches or when he wants you to understand something, he goes so deep into it to the point that you need to understand on a cellular level how this functions. And he's so meticulous and thorough in his explanation of how whatever it is works on a cellular level, because this isn't opinion, right? This is evidence, this is fact, this is how it works, and this has come from such intense, in-depth, thoughtful research spanning 40 years, still going on now in his basement, right?
Right.
And I think that is something that I really respect and admire, and something that really sets him aside from some other people who teach this is not just a subject, this is like a way of life.
Absolutely. I think one of the places where we saw that when we were discussing the hoof wall and the growth and all the cells, and, Danielle and I and many other people understand that the hoof wall is not the supportive structure of the hoof, that it is a shared load. And, we can go into this, but we already know this. But he spent so much time talking about and showing us slides and the absolute documented research on how all of those cells function. We were kind of saying, yeah, but, we kind of know this. We kind of know.
Right, I'm excited, and I want everybody else to be excited about the architecture of the digital cushion. I think that's that's everything. If you could only understand one thing about the horse's foot, you need to understand that, because if you understand that, you'll understand everything else. So I was kind of like, can we get to that? Let's talk about that more. Let's go to that, because everybody in this room needs to be as excited about that as I am. That's how I was feeling.
But if you don't unload the wall, you'll never get to the digital cushion. And I think, so he knows first step, first undeniable, we've got to get the research out here to show everybody in how the cells develop, form, die, become outer wall. That is so important, and how it is absolutely not a supporting structure like people think, that had to be number one. And I do see that now, as much as I'm a believer, but to get all of that information at, what was the magnification on some of those cells?
We could be anywhere from 10 times to 40 times to, I'd have to go back through my notes, but I believe the most extreme we saw was 1,000 times.
Right. And what did we learn from 1,000-time magnification? What did we learn?
What specifically are you talking about?
Well, we've learned that and I don't want to say like the outer layer, but some of the not so in-depth research is only giving us such a small bit of information. But once you get into 1,000-time magnification, it opens up a whole new world of information.
So I should make the disclaimer right now that we're filming this podcast before we have the opportunity to go back through our notes. So you're getting the very peripheral kind of overview of just our excited minds and how things went. We have not gotten to go back through and really sentence by sentence dig through yet. So there's going to be a lot of numbers and things that I'm going to say I'd have to check my notes. And I'm not going to do that right now, because instead on my computer screen, I have a little script so we stay on task, because we could talk about just one thing forever. But I say that just so y'all have the heads up. So you're thinking about where barium, these microvessels get so small in the horse's foot. I remember specifically the digital cushion, but I know there are other areas where when they've done venograms to try to map the vasculature of the horse's foot, the vessels are so small that red blood cells can only go through in a single file line, and red blood cells can kind of fold in order to do it, right? That's possible. But some vessels get even smaller. And so red blood cells can't go, but the other thing that can't go is the barium that they use to be able to map out the blood vessels during a venogram. And so forever, it's been the blood vessels that you can see with barium in them are what's there, and then that's it, because that would make sense.
Right.
And so it's been a lack of actually dissecting down to that 1,000 times magnification Dr. Bowker has, and is starting I say starting, has found and
has found a whole new world.
It's like when they finally get that telescope that can see out past and you realize
like,
that
whoa.
outside of our galaxy is like this whole new world. Or when they, were able to develop higher levels of magnification and they were able to see all of the microbes and things I don't understand that are living on even this surface, There's like a whole world right there that our eyes and whatever can't see. And it's not until... And so the foot's the same way. There's so much vasculature that's in the foot that's not in the anatomy books, that's not being taught because nobody found it. They didn't look, is kind of what he says.
Right, exactly. So that's very, very exciting. And yes, we've got questions being lined up so that when we get our minds around things just a little bit more, I promised him when we left that he was saying how he has nobody to talk to. And I said, hey, buddy boy, you'll have these two girls to talk to once we get our minds wrapped around all this.
But mine has not yet.
Yes, not yet.
I've got to invest some time to even kind of feel that way because there was so much at such a deeper layer than what I've ever thought about in my life about anything that was thrown at us. To kind of circle back around to him spending so long and taking us in so deep in every way possible, but including magnification on how hoof wall is produced.
Right.
And me kind of being like, oh, why are we here? Because everybody in the room, for the most part, didn't need to be sold on the idea that a horse's foot was not meant to be peripherally loaded. I mean, even just, and here's the deal, just logically, what mammal walks on its nail? None.
Right.
Just the horse, if you peripherally load them, that's the only animal that we say should walk on the nail. The horse just is not that special. They're very special, especially in here. But as far as going against everything that nature says should be, the horse isn't that special. They don't do that. They walk on the whole bottom of the foot. They walk on the thick pad just like every other mammal ever. And so even without going any deeper, I mean, for me, logically, hello. But even though he was talking to a room of people who were all kind of on the same page, he went so deep into it. And I think a big reason why is because as much as it's important to believe something and to know it to be true and to understand why, even on that more external level, one of our roles is going to be defending why, right? It's defending your faith. It's like apologetics. It is being able to say, not only do I believe this to be true, this is true, this is why it's true.
Exactly.
Because you see it all the time on, let's say, Facebook, because Facebook videos go out to the public, right? And so you have people who are on the same page, but then because my reels reach all sorts of people, you've got people who are out of their minds over how could you possibly take the wall down? They don't get it, And so it's one thing to be able to say, because a horse, I think the answer of like, why would a horse be the only mammal who walks on their nail should be enough, but it's not for people. Mm-mm. And so to be able to actually truly understand down to a cellular level, that means any question somebody throws at you, you're going to be able to have an answer to. And that's important.
That's
being
very
able
important.
to say, this isn't just what I believe, but this is factually why. And hopefully you don't have to go down that deep with most people. Right? They're going to start going, okay, maybe that makes sense a lot earlier on, but you can if you need to, especially if you're working with a veterinarian, somebody who's a little bit more educated on, right, the real physiology of the horse.
Right.
But you can go to that level and you can prove the evidence behind the thing that you're saying, because that thing that you're saying may be totally opposite to what they've been taught to believe. Now, on the flip side, some people, it doesn't matter how much evidence you throw at them. They believe what they believe, and that's going to be it. And those people, you can just say, okay, go be happy over there. But for those who are truly searching, sometimes being able to take it to that level is all somebody else needs to go, that makes sense. Now I'm comfortable and confident. And even though me and you don't feel like, we need that, it would be doing a disservice to that other person if we weren't able to answer the question they have where they are. Absolutely. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so that really started coming together for me as I kept listening. And it's like, okay, he's not trying to sell me on this. He knows we're all here with him. He's trying to help us defend the truth. And that there's nothing more valuable than that.
That's right.
You know?
So why do you think we've gotten into this battle of my granddaddy used to shoe this, and when we had navicular, we put an egg bar on or a heart bar on. So where do you think that came from?
Isn't it so sad, though, first, that, like, it's a battle? Like, it shouldn't be a battle. We're doing anything where you're doing for the health of an individual, especially an individual who's essentially helpless, right? They're stuck under our care, and we just need to try to do better for them. It should never be a battle, but oh my gosh, it's become such a battle. The farriers versus the barefoot people, the farriers versus the farriers, the barefoot people versus the barefoot people, this sector of people versus this sector of people. It's insane, the war that is going on, and it's like, oh, I don't ever want to speak bad about anybody on any of our social medias, so I'll speak bad about everybody. It's like, you ding-dongs, we need to be working together. Even if you don't totally love what I'm doing, I don't totally love what you're doing, we need to be working together, looking for good, solid evidence, and moving forward, and spend less time calling each other names and more time getting to the root understanding of how the biology works. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that was a tangent. But it's like, it's true. It has turned into a battle, and it's not supposed to be that way, because horses and owners who are just trying to find something better are the ones stuck in the crossfire.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it's like, no, this is so unprofessional is the thing. Like, the hoof care community is conducting itself in such an unprofessional way that it's like disgusting. But
so how did we get here?
So we got here, Dr. Bowker explained, because what hooves were studied, right? What hooves were studied? Did you go and take a totally healthy horse? He's sound, he's performing well, he's doing great. And did you put him down and cut his feet off? Right?
No,
just to study his
not.
feet? No, you're going to keep using him. He's doing good. The majority of the horses that have been studied throughout history, the horses who have written the anatomy textbooks, the horses who have dictated how a healthy foot works, or how the equine foot works, are the horses who had hooves that needed to be studied because they were lame, and they were put down typically because they were lame. And so these are the feet that we dissect. These are the feet that we study. Dr. Bowker sounded like he was in that kind of cycle for a long time too at MSU. You studied unhealthy feet. And so then you dissect an unhealthy foot. The digital cushion is of a fatty material. You write down, you see that enough times, you write down digital cushion's made out of fat. That's what it is.
Right.
Any of these hooves, digital cushion's made out of fat. Well, no, it's not. But we were studying an unhealthy model, and that's what it was. This is the case in a lot of different aspects of the horse's foot. We have been studying an unhealthy model, and then we've written it down, and it's been passed on. And now in our modern day textbooks, we say this is how an equine hoof is, right? And makes me wonder. Because I was going to say, like, you don't see them doing that in human medicine or whatever. But now, like, I kind of wonder, like, what things have we been taught are truth that are only truth because it's what they studied? It's not actually, now I don't know. Like, I actually don't know the answer to that. And now I'm nervous.
Well, let's go back to the digital cushion. A fatty digital cushion is not a supportive structure. So why would we want to land on it?
We wouldn't. So we
would
peripherally
say,
load them.
this certainly is not going to work, because when it's squished down, then the bone comes too close to the ground. And so, what's a stronger part of the foot? Well, the wall, the toe. And with use, things in the foot strengthen. So whatever it is, the more it's stimulated, the more it's used, the body goes, ooh, we need to strengthen this. And so, for example, we just ran into on a phone call with a dear friend. He's been running into issues with the local farriers. He's been asking questions. And so one leaves the toes pretty long. And so he said, why do you do that? And he said, well, because the toe is the strongest structure of the foot. And that is true in a horse who's done a lot of toe loading, right? So if the digital cushion's made out of fat, that's very weak. You don't want to load that anyway. So you're going to peripherally load the foot. In peripherally loaded feet, the back of the foot gets weaker and weaker. And so the back foot is uncomfortable. The horse knows, so they
do more toe loading when they're
Sure.
standing, when they're walking, whatever, the response, the natural response the body has to that is send more resources to the toe. So those hooves under dissection, you have a weak, underdeveloped digital cushion that you can't load, and you have very thick wall and lamina at the toe, very strong. And so common sense says the toe is the strongest part of the foot. We have to make sure that's on the ground so the horse can load it, because if we take it away, we're going to destabilize, we're going to weaken whatever word. If you've been on the internet, you've seen them put tons of words on it. You don't want to take that toe back, right?
Sure.
And he's not wrong. It's what he's been taught, but it's from dissecting, studying, saying this is normal of unhealthy models. It's like if we just had a bunch of these feet and we just dissected those and that was all you ever had, and you'd start to go, well, the wall and the coffin bone shouldn't be running in a parallel line, right? We should have a coffin bone rotated downward. That's normal. We know it's not, because it's few and far between enough that they knew it's not. And yet we could have been wrapped up into that world in an alternate universe. But instead, caudal failure is much more common. The horse is much more susceptible to it. It's something that plagues 98% of domesticated horses. And so it was a lot easier to make that jump than saying a foundered foot is normal.
Sure.
And yet this is the same. This is the same idea.
It's the
just more
same
extreme.
idea. Absolutely. You keep that frog off the ground, and for a certain amount of time, the horse is going to look more comfortable, right? But as the years go by and then things start to fail, well, that's just confirmation, or that's just the way he moves. And, there's another shoeing package to be able to make it look better. But we know that that's pathology.
Right. I remember for him, I'm not going to be able to tell the story verbatim right now, but for him, he was running in a circle. He said, figuring out what is going on in the back of this foot. And it wasn't until he was looking at a feral foot, well-developed feral foot, and he had a quarter horse cutting trainer, I'm pretty sure, who was running into navicular issues in his horses, and he was running out of patience for it. And so he had just put down, I think, a pretty good mare over navicular issues. They could not fix her, and brought Bowker the foot and was like, what's going on? And so Bowker just so happened to have the feral foot on the desk when he had the navicular foot on the desk, and he was able to recognize the difference in the back of the foot. And that's kind of, to me, from my understanding of the story, what then kind of caused this whole cascade of. And so as much as it's like so common sense to go like, of course the founder foot's not healthy. Duh.
Right.
At the same time, if we were indoctrinated to believe it was healthy from the beginning, how hard would it be for us to break that? And that's where we are with caudal failure. We just don't realize how far gone these feet are because we're so used to looking at them.
Right.
We've become so numbed to it that we don't look at the average foot and go, wow, there's actually something really wrong with that one. And this should no longer be normalized,
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, I've made notes here. And so I think that's a really good sentence that I'll read. A huge percentage of what we think we know about the hoof is actually just common pathology that became normalized. That's exactly what I was just saying, but that's a more eloquent way to say it.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
So a few just little highlights on the vasculature of the foot that we'll go into at another time. This is not going to be this is not it. But the foot having a portal system, there being full of sinusoids, and he described like cellophane bags that fill with fluid that help with shock dissipation or vibration. I need to get this right. Vibration dissipation. We think about the foot very much like a shock absorber or an oil pump. That's how we like to think about how the fluid moves. But for Dr. Bowker, it's all about the vibrations. The foot is a neurosensory organ, right? So it can feel tactile. It can respond to things. It's a neurosensory organ that specializes in vibration dissipation if it's working. And those are very important distinctions to make, because then you don't just think about the foot as a dumb shock absorber or a dumb pump. You think about the foot as something that is tactile and constantly changing and constantly making concessions for. It's like your car, your modern car's computer, right? Back in the day, you had a carburetor, and when wintertime came, you had to adjust that carburetor so the thing would run. And then in summertime, you had to adjust it again so that thing would run. Now we've got a computer with a gajillion different sensors constantly monitoring everything.
Yes.
Right? So as the temperature changes, as the engine temperature changes, as fuel quality changes, it's always modulating and just making little tiny changes to ensure your car, A, keeps running, but B, keeps running most efficiently.
Most efficient.
Right? And a gajillion calculations in a second, right? And that's what the foot is doing. It's making a gajillion calculations in a second, back up to the brain and back down to open vessels, close vessels, divert fluid, but only if it's working well. If it's not working well, it can't do those things. If it's not got ample blood flow, if those structures are not developed, if it cannot get the neurosensory input it needs, if it is restricted from that either because it's suspended on a shoe and just can't touch the ground, if it is spending all of its life in a boot and never touches the ground, if it is doing any of those things plus or minus bad trimming and it's too deteriorated to have the blood flow it needs, to have the innervation that it requires to do these things, whatever. If it cannot do these things, it cannot do these things. Then it cannot react and respond appropriately. And then you have heat founder and you've got wintertime laminitis and you have feet that wear too much when you ride, you do your endurance ride and they wear down, or you have soles that get thin, or you have whatever. You could just run the list longer than what we have time left on this podcast. It all stems from not good blood flow to that foot, underdeveloped structure. So something that Dr. Bowker said in the very beginning is that we have all these names for these conditions. We've got the founder, and we've got PDL osteolytis, and we've got ring bone and side bone, blah, 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 blah. But in 100% of those cases of any, just pick a pathology just out of the air, whichever one your horse has, whatever.
It's a game show.
Right? But pick one out of the hat. I don't care. Whichever one you want to think of. 100% of them, minus an injury. Okay, injury won't count. 100% of them will always have an underdeveloped digital cushion, underdeveloped back of the foot. Now, you don't have to have all of those pathologies with an underdeveloped back of the foot. Sometimes you just have the underdeveloped back of the foot. So you've got caudal foot pain, you've got /heel pain, /navicular, whatever. You've just got that. But any of these other ones, you're going to have an underdeveloped back of the foot because that is blood flow. And any of these other things, it's going to be a result of poor blood flow. Now, maybe poor blood flow plus mechanics, poor blood flow plus load, blah, blah, blah. But they're all going to have a poor blood flow component. And so if we could just get these horses landing and loading appropriately with a well-developed digital cushion, we would be curing not just navicular disease,
right,
but basically
plethora,
every disease ever, because the foot would be able to dissipate vibrations. These vibrations are so harmful, and they're what's eating away at your coffin bone. There's what's putting stress on joints, so it's adding extra bone. These vibrations are what's doing all that. In fact, they did a study they've done several studies, but one of the ones I can think of is they did a study in Sweden on guys who use the jackhammer, construction workers. And they were finding that, was it after, I can't remember if it's 15 minutes, an hour, I don't know, that they would then have vascular restriction for the next 3 days. And so in Sweden, it's something like you're only allowed to jackhammer for, I'm making up a number now, but like 5 minutes a day. You're not allowed to do it any further because it's going to be detrimental to your health. They did a similar study with rats where they exposed a rat's tail to a certain frequency vibration. And 3 days again, there was vasoconstriction to that rat's tail from the, you could say, trauma of the harmful vibrational frequencies. And so we do the same thing when the horse's foot, when we don't have a adequately developed neurosensory organ that can adapt and respond and dissipate vibration, then we have incredible vibrations attacking the horse's foot. I would have to look it up specifically, and maybe I will. Let me do that real quick. I knew I had it written down. I'm working on some notes. Okay, so on the topic of vibrations, Danish researchers did studies on shod horses, trotting on asphalt, etc., and they can generate between 200 to 300 megahertz of vibration within the hoof capsule. Vibrations that are 5,000 megahertz or more will cause vasoconstriction to soft tissue, to the body. Hey guys, quick intermission. So despite reading that information directly off my screen, I still misspoke. What I should have said is that metal shoes on firm surfaces generate 2,000 to 3,000 megahertz of vibration, and any vibration over 500 megahertz generally causes vasoconstriction lasting up to 3 days after even only 15 seconds of exposure. Therefore, the Danish researchers concluded that horses that have shoes, again, because they generate 2,000 to 3,000 megahertz vibration, should not move above a walk on these hard surfaces, as it is damaging and destructive.
But why do people put shoes on? Because they're going on hard ground.
Right.
They need, for pavement.
The Danish researchers who were doing these studies concluded, because the damage from the vibrations were so high in shod horses, that horses that have shoes should not move beyond a walk on hard surfaces, which is universally ignored. Everybody ignores that. But isn't that amazing? That's what I was wanting to find, and I'm glad I did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then.
Yeah, but that's why people put shoes on, because the ground is hard.
Right, the ground is hard. We have to protect them, and then we wonder why, they blow their knees out and they do all these things.
Right.
Aside from even the feet.
Aside
from the feet.
Yeah.
Of course, something's going to happen to the foot, but they do stuff higher up the body, and we're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
How did that happen?
So, besides the vasoconstriction aspect of it, what else does all that vibration do?
Well, you can't even really say besides the vasoconstriction aspect, because if you constrict the water pipe that's feeding the city. So besides cutting off water to the city, what else does it do? Well, the cascade until we have total societal breakdown, and people are pooing in the streets, and they're so after Helene, we kind of had that here, right? What kind of savages did people turn into because they didn't have water, right? It was amazing. So it's kind of like that. You can't really separate, but what she's alluding to and what we want to talk about is the cycle Dr. Bowker talked about, the cycle in the back of the foot, my favorite thing. And so we've talked about how the anatomy textbooks say that the digital cushion is made up of fat, right? But what really happens is it's not like belly fat. It is reactive fat, right? It can react and change and adapt. It is the myxoid tissues, and so they want to evolve. And they evolve through use, stimulation. So they go from fat to collagen to fibrocartilage. And so we want them at that fibrocartilage and beyond stage. But what happens is those harmful vibrations will actually cause the cells to deteriorate, or the tissues to deteriorate and devolve, right? So you can go from a fibrocartilagey foot that, if it is exposed to these high vibrations, will actually devolve back into fat. And that can be through, again, we can't separate it. I was going to say that can be through the vibrations, or that can be through lack of stimulation, but really we can't separate it, because if that horse is toe loading, if he's not stimulating the back of his foot, he's not dissipating the vibrations.
Right.
So you can't really separate. I used to always think it was just like if they didn't use it, you load them on their toe, they're not using it, then it devolves. Well, yes, but also it is being subjected to such high vibrational frequencies anytime they're on a firm ground, and you can't take that out of the equation. Because if they're not utilizing the back of the foot, they cannot dissipate the vibrations. And I think that's why it's so important for me to change my own mindset on, it's not shock absorption, it's vibration dissipation. They mean very similar things, but at the end of the day, the vibration dissipation has so much more meaning in it.
Right.
So I think that's an important distinction to make.
Absolutely.
Ooh, then we got to look at bones, and we got to look at x-rays, which was really cool, because we have sent x-rays to Dr. Bowker a plethora of times, and we'll tell my favorite story in a minute, but when he is going to look at a navicular horse, or any kind of rehab horse, but the navicular ones get him real excited. When he goes to look at an x-ray, all he wants is one lateral view of each front foot. And
that doesn't go well with a lot of the vets who are taking the x-rays.
Do you remember we were at a big barn, and there were a couple of navicular horses there, that the owners were interested in working with Dr. Bowker. And so we were there while the vet was there to get the x-rays. And so the particular vet is kind of the hoof guru for the area. And the area that we were in, which I'm not disclosing because we don't talk crap on this channel, okay? We don't do it. And so he was, telling the owners he was going to need these 8 different views and da-da-da-da-da. And we said, no. We're sending him to Dr. Bowker and he only needs the one view. Well, if he really wants to see, he's going to need X and Y and Z. And no, Dr. Bowker doesn't want to be bothered with all these other views. He wants the one view. That's all he needs, and that's all the owners need to pay for. And so I think one of them, if I remember right, I think one of them did the one view, but I know the other guy got talked into all the views, and they're not needed. They're just not needed. So, but we've always kind of wondered, we can look at the x-ray and kind of guess some things. Obviously we've seen enough of them, but what is this man really seeing on the x-ray?
What is he looking at? Yes, and now we know.
We got to go through it, and holy smokes, it's something I have to practice. I'm going to have to look at x-rays and practice noticing these things. But it was, of course, with an x-ray on the screen and him pointing out, it was so obvious. So that was a lot of fun. But one of the things he talked about was that all you really need is the coffin bone. And it's kind of like an archaeological dig. With a coffin bone, you can really put together how that horse lived, how he was managed, what his foot was like, just based on what you have going on with this coffin bone. And so I think it was back when he had students, they actually sliced up the coffin bone with 5 millimeter distances, intervals. And so you could actually kind of take a walk through the coffin bone, which I just think
wouldn't that be cool?
Wouldn't that be cool? To even have the wherewithal to know we should be looking at it this in depth. I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal. And somebody needs to be doing it is the thing.
Right.
Somebody has got to be thinking about it like that and doing it. One of the sets of pictures we looked at was a 3-year-old racehorse versus a 25-year-old, was it a draft horse? Might have been a regular horse, quarter horse. I don't remember. And because we like to think, as they age, these things are going to happen, right? As they age, these things are going to happen. But age isn't necessarily a disease. We've talked about that before on this podcast. It's maybe increases the likelihood of disease, but it's not a disease in and of itself. They just might need a little extra hand-holding. And so the racehorse coffin bone had far more osteoporosis or thinning of the coffin bone, more
and this was a 3-year-old.
3-year-old, more holes in it. It was on a lateral view in an x-ray. It was much easier to see through, right? You're going to have, when you're looking at that lateral view, you're going to have the front and the bottom very bright white, but then the center is very opaque, and it's not supposed to be that way. That's not how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to be quite, is opaque the word? I think opaque's the word. Mm-hmm. Whereas that older horse, his coffin bone was much more opaque. He didn't have all of these holes and stuff in his. And so why was that? It's because of how that foot was being loaded, right? Mm-hmm. The blood flow that foot had, the vibration dissipation that foot had. He didn't have the harmful vibrations eating away at his coffin bone, right? It didn't matter the age. It mattered the function of that foot, how that foot was working. And so that was pretty cool. But I have to practice my x-ray reading now with my Dr. Bowker lenses. Yeah. It's so much more than how thick is the sole? What angles are they at? No.
Well, and we started looking at some, but then you have to differentiate between a poor x-ray and then a good x-ray, yet a poor bone. So that's been kind of fun to look at.
That takes more experience, right?
Yes.
But man, there's in that x-ray, in that one singular lateral x-ray, not that there's not value in other views for other stuff. There totally is. I'm not discounting it. But in one lateral x-ray, you can both know what has been happening, what is happening, and you can also know what's going to happen in the future if this isn't turned around.
Right.
That's the big deal.
That is the big deal.
And I think if that was understood better, I think pre-purchase exams would be a lot more valuable, right? Because they'll go may need maintenance. Well, what does that mean? Right? In that x-ray, you can tell that client if that horse is going to get navicular or at least have navicular lameness, let's say, actually start limping in the next year or two.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell them if you knew how to look at that x-ray.
Right.
But instead, may need maintenance. Maybe they go a little while. Maybe next year they're lame. And it's like, oh, wow, why did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
It was there to be seen. I
Right.
can't tell you how many x-rays we've seen from pre-purchase exams. There are owners who are like shocked that their 5-figure horse just went lame all of a sudden. And you get the x-rays from the pre-purchase and it's like, how did nobody tell you? How did nobody tell you? I mean, hoof pictures too. You can see it all in a hoof picture, but the x-rays, like they should have told you, but they didn't know, right? Because a lot of these things, like a bone thinning as a horse ages, it's just normal. And that goes back around to we've studied unhealthy feet and we've normalized pathology.
Right.
Bad on us.
That's the shame.
That's the shame.
That's the shame.
Yes. So to wrap it up, it was so cool to be a part of all of it, how deep we went. But then also Dr. Bowker throwing all of this on us and then being like, I need your questions because like, I know the direction I'm kind of headed, but like, I need your questions to know which way to go. And it's like, dude, you don't need us for anything. Are you crazy? But that honest integrity in the students need to kind of guide what needs to be taught, because where it is we're struggling is what needs to be taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so the willingness to kind of come down to our level and not just be like, how can't you understand all this, but like, where are you struggling? That was really, really, really cool. And I know I walked away from the event both brain twisted. I have a lot of going back over and back over and back over and back over my notes to really set into stone, because I mean, I'm just hanging on to ideas and numbers and stuff just by a prayer, So to really indoctrinate myself with that understanding, but also walked away with understanding the importance of why I need to do that. Right? Because to take it back to like apologetics, being able to defend beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's way, 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 way too much, too many, it's too common, people out there making bold claims because whatever it is they did worked on a horse or two with no science or evidence to back it up. Mm-hmm. And I say it again, I don't care how successful you are as a trimmer. If you don't really understand the inside, it is all just anecdotal, coincidental. I'm glad you made a difference in a couple horses, but we have got to teach the biology. Right. We have got to teach the biology.
We have to get the biology into the 21st century, is the correct biology.
And we have to get it into the textbooks.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, even a lovely textbook that we have, and we thought, oh, this is great. And I think we showed Dr. Bowker.
Let's see. We can try to find the page. Oh, she's looking at her.
Right here. It's right there. There we go. Yes.
This is the book. I've mentioned it before, and you guys have been like, what book is that? It's this one. You go ahead. I'll find the page.
It's a lovely book. And as we were discussing it with Dr. Bowker, he basically said, well, that's a great study in a deformed hoof.
And that's not what they were teaching.
That's not what they were going for. That's the problem.
This is flat out an anatomy book. So let's see. I'll show this in the camera.
It up and you can point.
But if it doesn't come up well on the camera, I'll insert photos. So this is beautiful. Shows the vessels. Shows all the vessels that you can show, right? We know there's a gajillion more that you can't see because they're too small. But this area is missing vessels. And it doesn't say anything about that in the book. It's just like, this is this and that is that. It's labeling stuff. It's not like, ooh, that's weird. That just is what it is. And so that was something we had shown Dr. Bowker. And if we look, this is the foot that they are dissecting. I mean, look at that sucker. And then if we remember back, this is where the vessels were missing because of the damage and the vibration and the stretching and the pulling and just whatever word you want to put on it from the long toe, the peripheral loading destroyed the blood vessels. Now, they can come back. They can regenerate to a great degree. They can open back up the ones that are still there. It's amazing what they can do. But this has to be sorted first in order to redevelop that blood flow. And so do you think this hoof is going to act as a good neurosensory organ if it's missing a substantial portion of the blood vessels, the ones that are big enough we can see?
Right.
If
Oh,
those
could you
big guys
imagine?
are missing,
Yeah.
can you imagine what's happening to the little tiny ones? They're probably all gone, right? No, that horse, when it gets really cold, may get wintertime founder, right? And we're going to, again, I keep doing this. We're going to act shocked, Why did that happen? Well, not only is there poor blood flow so the hoof can't stay warm if it wanted to, but it doesn't know to because it's not getting the input that it needs because we've destroyed the neurology of it, right?
Mhm.
These things make sense now, but this book isn't saying, oh, this is wrong. This book is just saying this is normal.
This is what it is.
This is what it is. And that just, no wonder why we're in the climate we're in with hoof care.
Right.
And so that's what hopefully over time, if enough of us talk about it, we can change. And so I've got a big project at hand with this lecture that I'm going to be working on. I can't share too much about yet, but my course has been delayed because of it. But I think this mission's far more important because we need to start getting this stuff into anatomy books, right? New vets need to be taught this stuff. New farriers need to be taught this stuff. So even if we decide to go a little different route than what we would do in our trim, at least we understand the fundamentals so we can kind of work towards doing better, right?
Mhm.
Good, better, best. Even if we can't get to best today, it's okay. But we have to start working towards good because we're not there right now.
Yeah.
I really should have started out with this because this is like something that I want anybody who listens to the podcast to really take home. Because again, this is connected to getting stuff into the anatomy books and the textbooks, but understanding because this is something that Dr. Bowker preaches, and I can't believe I didn't bring it up earlier in the podcast, but oh well. This is a reward for those of you who listen to the end. Form dictates function, and function dictates form. So horse owners can be far more accountable for their horse's hoof health, for the condition of their horse's hoof, for the likelihood of whether or not their horse is going to have a catastrophic pathology in the future if they just understood this. What you see on the outside tells you a ton about what's happening on the inside because what's happening on the inside shapes what it looks like on the outside, but also how we make it look on the outside via the trim dictates what happens on the inside, right? So how we trim that foot, how we affect the outside, how we load it, how we ask the pressures to be shared forms the inside structure. And then the inside structure is the architecture for how the outside of that foot looks, right? It's not the foot isn't just the static things, but it's all of this stuff on the inside that inflates and develops that then creates the shape you have on the outside. And so if you learn, this is not the first time I've talked about this. If you learn what it should look like on the outside, and then you learn what the outside is affected by on the inside, you don't have to be a trimmer or somebody super specialized in a horse hooves to look at your horse's feet or to look at a horse you're about to buy, whatever, and go, this is going on and that's going to lead to this. Or this horse is at risk of XYZ. Or this horse has really nice feet and as long as I maintain this, he should be great for the next 30 years. You can have that kind of accountability. Or on your own personal horse, you can say, I see XYZ. Let's just say, make it super simple. Let's just say a big, a foot that looks like a hot air balloon, right? Real big and wide you're looking at the bottom, real big and wide at the toe, narrow at the back of the foot with a central sulcus infection. Now you know because you've learned that narrow back of the foot means the back of the foot is not being used, is not developing, right? Because if it was, it'd be big and wide and it'd be making the back of the foot big and wide because internal architecture pushes the shape into the foot. Well, no, that's not happening. So it's narrow, whereas the front of the foot is big and wide. The toe is big and wide because the area of the foot that's used the most is what the body sends resources to. This is why they think the toe is the strongest part of the foot because we've only studied on healthy feet where you can look at that and go, I know that horse is toe loading too much. The back of his foot's falling apart. We have the extra layer is saying, we know he's not going to be dissipating vibrations very well. So now we've opened the door to XYZ. Something has to change. I need to talk to my farrier. I need to maybe find a new one. Look through the photos of hooves they have online, right? Their work. See what shape of a foot they create, right? Are all of their feet that hot air balloon look where the front's huge and the back is small? Or do they create a nice big round foot with a big wide frog? If they do, maybe that's the farrier you want to choose, right? You have so much more power and options when you can understand, and then you can start holding these professionals accountable. And that's what has to happen is nothing is going to change just because me and you want it to change. This is only going to change when the horse owners start to band together and say, our horses deserve better. Our horses deserve good, our horses deserve better, and then our horses deserve the best, right? That's the only time it's ever going to start to shift. And so I encourage everybody to take an interest and to start familiarizing yourself with the form that goes along with good function and the form that goes along with bad function. Because to be able to recognize both is very important.
Very important.
We are well over an hour, though I'm sure with cutting and trimming and whatnot, we'll probably be close to an hour. So we should probably wrap it up. This has been awesome. It's been very good to be back podcasting, especially in the warm. That was nice. You're lucky I got to do this today because I lost the power cable for this ring light we use, so it's light. And we just spent the last 3 hours tearing the house apart, tearing the car apart, just for it to be right there in the hatch of my car under a trim tool. But we found it with enough time to be able to do this, and so you're welcome. I hope you guys enjoyed this very special episode. I look forward to sharing more. I plan to try to share more, especially on the Patreon as I'm working through this project. I have little aha moments and whatever. I plan to put that up on the Patreon for you guys to benefit from. Thank you again to all of our Patreon members. You guys are friggin' awesome. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends, anybody who you think might benefit from it. If you have a podcast topic you'd like us to talk about, please put it in the comments of this YouTube video or put it in the comments somewhere over on Patreon. I'm able to keep up with those comments pretty well, whereas social media, if you put it over there, I'm not going to see it. We get too many comments. That's just the blunt truth.
Yeah, we appreciate you spending the last hour with us.
Yes, and we can't wait to see you guys again. So thank you for everything, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.